Welcome everyone to chapter 6, and this chapter is about arrays. Now the question is, what is an array? An array is a collection of variables in a list format. Now the one rule for an array is the whole of the array has the same type. So I'm going to quickly draw a block here to illustrate an array. So this will be seen as an array just now for the example. Now, as I said, the array, each element in the array can be seen as a single variable, but now it's all linked together. So an array has a type and each and every element must be the same type, and as well an array has a size, and that will be the two main things that we need to take in consideration when we create arrays. So when we create an array in the C language, we will use an array exactly the same as we use a variable. Let's start off with hash include stdio.h int main void and close the brackets. Now let's say, for instance, we want to create an array with the name A. Okay, so we want to create an array with the name A. Now this array needs a type, the same way a variable needs a type. So let's make the type integer. So this array has now a type of integer, so it can store number values. It's got a name. Then we need to give the size. Now the size of the array is indicated in square brackets, and let's say, for instance, this array has a size of 5. So this is the normal way of declaring an array. So if we read this, this is going to be an array of type int with the name A and a size of 5. Then there's multiple ways of also defining an array. This is our normal standard way, and then there's also a way of defining an array. Let's call this array B of type int. We don't explicitly tell the size now, but then we can give the array default values. Let's say, for instance, 1, 2, and 3. And as you see, we use curly brackets and then 1, 2, and 3, and they are split with a comma sign. Now, as you can see, there are 3 values in this array. So the array has a size of 3, and the compiler will pick up that this array has a size of 3. Then, for instance, what we also can do is, let's say we want to create an array called C of size 10, for instance, but all the values in the array we want to be 0. And we can do just this. So there's a size of 10. In the curly brackets we give a 0, and we end the line with a semicolon. So what will happen is this array will have a size of 10, a type int, a name C, and all the values in this array will be set to 0. So this is our 3 basic ways of defining an array. Now, standard programming protocol throughout many languages, we use constants to define the size of an array. Now, what's a constant? A constant is like a value, for instance, the value of pi. The value of pi is constantly 3,14, etc., etc., depending on the amount of numbers you need after the comma. So we can go and define a constant. So we want to define a constant. That's how you remember how to write it. Define. So you start off, your constants you define just below your library. And I'm going to get to it in green. Okay, so your constants you define just below your library include, you say hash define, hash define, then you say size, and you have a space between define and size, and then a space again, and then what do you want to define your size as? 10. So you defined a constant with the name size, and the value of size is 10. Now we can use that size to create our arrays. Now this is not wrong. This is just another way how they use it in practice. So int d is now another array that we have created now. In square brackets, we say size. And this will be now an array called d with a type of int. In square brackets, we indicate our size, but we use the constant that we get from here. And we define the array with a size of 10. Okay, so that's the basics. Okay, so let's quickly just do an example. Let's say, for instance, we have our program here. And we create an array of type int. We call this array ARR. It's got a size of 5, semicolon. Now we want to set some of these elements inside the array to a certain value. Now, I'm going to quickly draw out our block here. So we have an array called ARR of type int and a size 5. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now we want to go and set each specific element in the array to a certain value after we have declared now the array. Now how would we do that? Before we can do that, we need to understand the indexing of each element. So each element in an array has a certain index. Now in the C programming language, indexing of an array starts at 0. So each and every array that you will encounter starts at 0. So if it's an array of size 1, the first index will be 0. If it's an array of size 100, the first index will also be 0. So if you work in another language, another programming language, you just go and make sure that when you use arrays that the indexing where it starts. So in the C programming language, the index starts at 0 and it will count to the length of the array. So if it's an array of size 5, our indexing will be between 0 and 4 for a size of 5. If it's a size 100, the indexing will be 0 to 99. So always the size minus 1 is the last index and the first index is 0. Okay, so now that we understand that there's something called indexing, we can go and set each element after the declaration to a certain value that we want it to be set. Okay, so let's use now this array. So we have declared the array, now we can go and use the array. So we say the array name, and now we use the square brackets to call this specific index. So let's say at index 1, we want the value to be 3. So what will happen with this statement is, it will see array. Okay, so it will go to that specific array called ARR. Index 1, okay, we go to index 1, and the value is going to be 3. Okay, so that's the basic working of an array. So if we want to set another index to a certain value, or another element to a certain value, let's say index 4 to be equal to 9, we will go to an array called ARR. We go to index 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we set that specific element to 9. Now, please note that the array's indexes are from 0 to 4 for this specific array. So let's say, for instance, you make a mistake in your code and you say ARR 6 set to 7. Now this statement in itself is problematic, just because 6, the index 6, doesn't exist in this array. This statement will give you an error. A lot of compilers will give you explicit error of out of bounds. So out of bounds means outside the boundaries of this array. And this is not a normal error like a syntax error, but an out of bounds error. And in some cases, this can be futile for your program and may be your computer, because you're going outside the memory address of this array. But luckily our compiler picks it up as an out of bounds and it won't compile. So please make sure that you do not go outside the bounds of your array. Okay, that's the basics of a normal array. After that, we can now look at, in your textbook you will see there's a subsection called strings. String. Now what's a string? A string is a collection of characters. So a collection of characters. Now a string type doesn't exist in C programming. It does exist in C++, so we need to create a char array to have a string. Now a string is a collection of characters, meaning a word or maybe a sentence. So when we go and create a string, we will say char. We can call it string, let's call it string, it's just about or, string 1, and it's got a size of 10. So this is now just a normal string in C programming language. How we would declare a string, it's exactly the same how we declare a normal array it's now just called a string, but it's just a char array. Now in the compiler there's different ways of using or declaring a string as well that we need to note. We can declare a string in this manner, so it's a straightforward basic char array, or we can say, let's say char A. We don't declare the size in the square brackets, and we say it's equal to first. So we have the double inverted commas. So this is a string called A, or a char array, with a size of whatever inside the double inverted commas. Now please note that the total amount of characters is your size plus a special character. That's now the difference between normal arrays and string arrays when we declare it in this manner. Now let's quickly count the amount of characters. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as I said, your char array, when you declare it with the double inverted commas, the size or the amount of characters inside the double inverted commas is your size. So it's 5 plus a special character. Now that special character is called your null character. And your null character looks something like this. Okay. So that's the basic of a string. So in actual fact, this string called A has a size of 6. Now, if you would go and declare this, this is going to be equal to a char, let's call it B for instance now, a char B of size, and we will declare that size now in the curly brackets, and we say first. Now as you can see, it's now single inverted commas, because double inverted commas we normally used for sentences or words. So in single inverted commas we only have one character. So first I R S T, and then the null character, close semicolon. Okay, so these two are exactly the same, but now we can actually see where the special character fits in. The special character ends a string value. Okay, so that's the basics of declaring a string. String values is nice to use, and we can also use string values very easily with the printf statement. Let's say for instance, and we say %s for string. Okay, we normally used C for char, so now a collection of chars is called a string, so we can just say %s, double inverted commas, and we can go and output A to the user. If we read a string into an array, a char array, we can use the scanf statement in the same manner. We say %s, and now there's no ampersand sign, just let's say for instance B. So that's how we read in a string, and that's how we print out a string. So now that you know how to create a string or a char array, you'll be able to create arrays throughout your whole program and use them.